Welcome into This Week at Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a little guy raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 70s and the 80s. Warning as I do, we try to have some fun here, we try to heal, we try to be informative. Each episode features my own brand of sarcasm, humor, and experiences. Please note, it is never meant to offend. We're just trying to lighten up a pretty heavy subject, at times very serious. I want to start this week with a quote that I appreciate. Everybody knows I love my quotes. It comes to us from author Roy Bennett, who said something profound, at least in my opinion. He said, quote, "If you want to be happy, do not dwell in the past. Do not worry about the future. Focus on living fully in the present." End quote. And I thought that was a nice comparison to last week's Disneyland sign. Live in the present. Those words took on special meaning for me after I left Jehovah's Witnesses. After being raised in the organization, they had so well successfully molded my thinking as a kid and as a man, as an adult. Every decision I made, from baptism and work and even my marriage, was tainted with what amounts to a lie. A lie that true happiness only exists in the future. I can't begin to tell you how that training has impacted my life personally. Everything I did and every decision I made, everything I contemplated was with an eye on someday that wasn't here yet. I'm sure many can relate to that. But the pervasiveness of that type of belief system has long formed the foundation of all things Jehovah's Witnesses. Someday. And it's been there from the very beginning. Whatever is happening today is nothing compared to living on a paradise earth. If you're experiencing hard times, the paradise will solve it. If you're relatively happy today, it's not real happiness. That only comes in God's kingdom at some point in the future. This message has never changed for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's been there from the beginning. So it should come as no surprise that this month's JW broadcast features yet another 58 plus minutes of reinforcement on all things someday. And you're just enduring whatever you're going through today. This broadcast was a lot of fun, and as I always do, I encourage everyone to go watch this right on the only website powered by Holy Spirit. Allegedly. Don't take my word for anything. You can watch this video. That's all I did. And this broadcast in March starts out strong. Our host welcomes us, and he tells us, quote, "In the next hour, we will learn why putting Jehovah's will ahead of our own interests improves our life and protects us from harm." End quote. Someday. Doing what Jehovah wants is all that matters, and it will protect you from the boogeyman or harm. He makes the comment right from the outset. And of course it does. Who can forget what we were told in the Listening to the Great Teacher book, where it told us, quote, "Keep your mind open and your life will be an amazing adventure." End quote. So the counsel this week is bound to be what they call a great adventure. As he says this, Jehovah's Witnesses are treated to a video that will set the tone for the rest of the broadcast. As always, again, please go watch it. Seeing is believing. But allow me to do my best to do what we do on this crazy show, provide a few highlights. Viewers are treated at the very beginning of the broadcast to young people, maybe teenagers, maybe in their 20s, Well, vacuuming stairs and washing windows. The images hit you right from the beginning, and I'm not kidding. Doing what Jehovah wants is the best way of life, and it protects us from harm, and that includes vacuuming stairways in dimly lit stairwells, and of course, washing windows. That's what Jehovah wants. Gee, where could this be going? As I said, this is off to a strong start because they're already encouraging life as a window washer inside Jehovah's Witnesses, and oh, they still haven't found even a semblance of self-awareness. It blows my mind. With all the spying they do online, and folks, that is a fact. They spy on internet forums, places like Reddit, which I don't even know how to use, and all sorts of other places. They spy to see what's being said about them. They have a department that does this. Despite that, they apparently haven't stumbled onto the memes regarding life as a Jehovah's Witness window washer because, well, here it is again on full display. Be a vacuum cleaner guy and a window washer. And am I the only one who wonders why Jehovah is obsessed with clean windows? What is his deal? He doesn't even have windows in his kingdom halls, but he is obsessed with clean windows. Welcome to the March 2025 JW broadcast, where the governing body leaves all semblance of self-awareness at the door, right along most of their brains. The host teases us this month by telling us what is part of the spiritual feast they're serving up, and it includes more canned video shots dubbed over with his commentary, including how we all like to be recognized as people. But being recognized by Jehovah brings the most joy. Then they're going to tell us how young people should seek low-paying work in order to be out preaching for them. And then finally, how to have peace and love in our marriages is highlighted. Stop me if you've heard any of this stuff before. We're about to get career and marriage advice from the 11 guys in upstate New York. The music swells during the intro, and we are welcome to JW Broadcasting, where the studio head is none other than Jesus Christ himself. Allegedly. As it begins, we're introduced to Brother Joel Dellinger, helper to the service committee, who will be our host this month, and is undoubtedly, in my opinion, a fulfillment of some random prophecy in the book of Revelation. But we won't know until, again, the future, if they ever give us an update to Revelation. You see, it's been 37 years since Jesus directed the faithful and discreet slave to talk to Jehovah's Witnesses about Revelation. And let's be honest with ourselves, in 37 years, a lot has changed, including, well, who the faithful and discreet slave even is. That changed. But here is Brother Dillinger, no doubt in fulfillment of something the minor prophet Obadiah said in the Bible back during the 6th century. Here he is. It's got to be fulfillment of something, right? Brother Dillinger starts with our theme for the month. Are you ready for this? The theme is keep seeking great things for Jehovah. He sets the tone by saying that everything that follows in the broadcast is based on some powerful advice Jehovah gave to a guy named Baruch. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, Baruch? Yeah, who is Baruch, you ask? It's a great question because the next 57 minutes are all going to be based on what Jehovah said to Baruch. I'll give you a quick rundown on who Baruch was. In a nutshell, Baruch was the scribe. He was a disciple, a secretary, and a friend of the biblical prophet Jeremiah. There's a name we recognize, Jeremiah. And he lived around 625 BCE, where in true Jehovah's Witness fashion, we are to believe that Jehovah said something to him that you and I can use today if we're considering a career in 2025, if we have challenges in our marriage and family in 2025, and a whole bunch more. Brother Dillinger takes us to the Bible. He reads some verses to get us acquainted with Baruch, because undoubtedly most Jehovah's Witnesses don't remember who Baruch is, but they know who he is. These talks are designed to get us to relate to a man from 625 BCE and why you and I should be just like him in 2025. Anybody who's been a Jehovah's Witness recognizes this formula. It's in every talk, it's in all the dramas, it's now in their videos, it's in their movies, and it will undoubtedly be the formula used in their new movie studio Jesus is building in New York. He goes on to give a history of Jeremiah, how Baruch recorded his prophecies, and more. You see, at one point, Jeremiah, and I'm going to try to summarize this from the Bible without having to read from it for long periods of time, Jeremiah was banned from the temple at one point, so he sent Baruch in to read messages of doom to the Jews. They were being bad in Jehovah's eyes. They were being bad kids. So he sent Baruch to say, I'm going to get you slaughtered. Sort of like what we did in elementary school. You remember, by sending your best friend over to that cute girl to tell her you're breaking up with her. It's a lot like that. It's a lot like that. Jeremiah couldn't go, so he sent his buddy in to tell him. The Jews get mad. They tell Baruch and Jeremiah that they better hide, and then they give the king the scroll. Well, the king's a bad guy. He wasn't happy to hear he would be whacked and wanted two random guys that walked into the city and told him he would get wiped out. He wanted them arrested. Jeremiah and Baruch are in trouble. And apologies again, I'm trying to sum it up succinctly here. But what comes next is very familiar to a Jehovah's Witness. After reading from the Bible and telling the story, Brother Dillinger asks, quote, what can we learn from Baruch? End quote. And here comes another reach, tapping into a random and very minor Bible character to tell us how it relates to our lives in the 21st century. And I tell you, my first thought was, send your friends to do your dirty work, or maybe become a copywriter in 2025, or hang out with people saying the world will be destroyed. Was it any of those things? Nope. Brother Dillinger says he was humble. And I really invite you to go watch this. I can't do it justice. Brother Dillinger has a real Hollywood flair. I recognize you have to do that on a podcast too, but boy, does he really add some flair with the voice and the gestures. And of course, Baruch was humble. Of course he was. He was a Jehovah's Witness, even though they didn't exist, but he was a Jehovah's Witness back then. I wonder how they're going to apply an obscure guy mentioned in just a couple of verses in the entire Bible to what we should be doing in 2025. Does this mean we should all be humble? How does he know he was humble, by the way? Does Brother Dillinger know Baruch? Did he get access to him somehow? Did he pull up his profile from a former dating site? I don't know. No clue. But Baruch and the couple of verses he's mentioned in prove that Baruch was humble because he wrote down what Jeremiah said and then read it back to him out loud. We don't have to wait long, folks. I know we never do, because the message to all Jehovah's Witnesses regarding Baruch comes next. Brother Dillinger says, quote, like you, brothers and sisters, Baruch was happy to support Jehovah's work and to do whatever was asked of him. He did not let his family status or personal goals distract him. End quote. The message. Find an obscure Bible character we know nothing about outside of a couple mentions and a handful of verses, and arrive to the conclusion that Baruch was willing to do whatever was asked of him, and he let nothing get in his way, including taking care of himself. And there it is. Even if you're sitting here and you're thinking, I don't remember Baruch, you will remember the message. As a Jehovah's Witness or someone studying with them, your family and your personal goals aren't important. They never have been. You are to do whatever Jehovah asks you to do. And without looking ahead in this video, let me guess what that might be. Jehovah is using his own version of Baruch in 2025, somewhat ironically, to deliver this very message, right? Let me guess, the governing body, are they the Baruch class? We all recognize this type of terminology. No amount of time away from this organization or any amount of therapy wipes out the J-dub formula from your head. It's always the same thing. Probably because it's about as basic a formula as you'll find in a nursery rhyme. He drones on about Baruch having endurance, writing the scroll by hand because he didn't have computers. He wrote the scroll by hand for 23 years, only to have the king take his scroll and burn it. And it wasn't Baruch's work, folks. It was Jehovah's message the king was burning. He then says Baruch had courage because the king had been killing other people. And then he slips in this comment, quote, but have to really emphasize this because this is the message. Quote, but Baruch fearlessly used his professional skills and contacts to support Jehovah's prophet. End quote. No. Look, with all due respect, there has to be at least one Jehovah's Witness watching this thinking, what the hell did he just say? There is no question many Jehovah's Witnesses have been guilted into giving their time, resources, skills, and more to this organization. You see, that's how you give to Jehovah if you're a witness. Their skills, as Brother Dillinger says, are part of that. Even those who ironically actually went to college to acquire those skills. They have no problem if you have those skills and use them for the organization. Their free labor program is well documented. Anywhere and anything from standing with a book cart to help build movie studios. These are all people using their skills for a non-profit organization, right? They receive no pay, no health care, no travel costs, just Brother Dillinger telling Jehovah's Witnesses to be like Baruch and give them your skills. It's all about you giving everything you have to them. As he said there, quote, but Baruch fearlessly used his professional skills and contacts to support Jehovah's prophet. But folks, when is the last time you heard the governing body try to low-key ask for your business contacts? Does anyone remember this one before? I know what happens in conversations. I know what happens in meetings. On JW Broadcast, the governing body, be like Baruch, give us your business contacts. And I got to tell you, apparently Baruch had quite the Rolodex, or maybe his LinkedIn profile was really up to speed back there in 625 BCE, because apparently he was willing to share his professional contacts, as Brother Dillinger says, with Jehovah. Wow. The application in this episode is powerful, is it not? I wonder who shared their professional contacts with or for Jehovah that time. You remember they got the permits pushed through for their Ramapo construction project. Remember that experience? Baruch went to lots of after-hours networking events, all to serve Jehovah. Does this mean that Jehovah's Witnesses can do that too? Can I go to my company's after-hours business event? Can I network with worldly people? Again, as you watch this broadcast, you realize, and it's reiterated every week, that they don't think this stuff through. But you don't have to when you selfishly want to lean into your followers' professional contacts and skills. And by the way, somehow, some way, this all has to do with an obscure Bible character named Baruch. He was Jeremiah's scribe. I can't wait to get some networking tips from Baruch in paradise. He'll be resurrected after all. But Brother Dillinger isn't done with Baruch in the March J-Dub broadcast. Despite being humble, courageous, and filled with endurance, Baruch faced negative things too, just like we do in 2025. He takes us to Jeremiah chapter 45. Bear with me here. This entire chapter is a whopping 5 verses long. And starting in verse 2 is where I'll begin. And if you really want to laugh, if you really need a chuckle, go watch this guy read this with his personal voice inflections. He is excited to read these 3 to 4 verses. He really gets into it. And I'm going to do my best here to try to copy him, okay? You're going to see the J-Dub training come through. It's incredibly hard to shake, despite being out for 15 years. This is what Brother Dillinger says, quote, "This is what Jehovah, the God of Israel, says concerning you, Baruch. You have said, 'Woe to me, for Jehovah has added grief to my pain. I am weary from my groaning, and I have found no resting place.' You should say to him, 'This is what Jehovah says. Look, what I have built up I am tearing down, and what I have planted I am uprooting the entire land. But you are seeking great things for yourself. Stop seeking such things. For I am about to bring a calamity on all flesh, declares Jehovah, and wherever you may go, I will grant you your life as a spoil." End quote. Jeremiah 45. New World Translation. Brother Dillinger follows that up by saying, why was Baruch feeling like this? Was he tired of performing his assignment or the circumstances in which he had to perform it? End quote. Uh-oh. We all know this line of thinking. Here it comes. Someone has clearly been bitching about their theocratic assignment. Somebody's been complaining, and we're going to tap into Baruch to fix it. The March JW broadcast is a universal version of what amounts to, you remember, a local needs talk. And the message is simple. Quit seeking good things in your life and quit bitching about what we ask you to do. Here it comes. He continues by saying Jehovah said, basically that Baruch had a bad attitude. I mean, imagine, he'd only been listening to Jeremiah for 23 years and writing down every word of it. Then he was sent into the buzzsaw in Jerusalem to read it out loud in the temple courtyard. It wasn't the assignment, though, that made Baruch a bad guy for a moment. It was the fact that he wanted better things in life. He wanted a better life. Why would anyone want that? Where could this be going to an attentive Jehovah's Witness listening in? Dillinger then says on camera, quote, was his support for God's prophet be putting at risk his position and career? Or did the great things have to do with getting more money, property, or some material possessions? We do not know, end quote. And to that, I thought, you don't? You seem to know everything about Baruch from 2 or 3 verses. Well, then why did you just list those possibilities as the reason he wanted better things or his list of better things if you do not know? We call this making shit up. That's what it is. And who could be God's prophet here? How are they relating that? Anyone want to take a guess? Is someone bitching about working for God's prophet? March 2025, we're going to address it. Brother Dillinger, in a moment of pure comedy, then says this, quote, I imagine him reasoning something like this. Jehovah knows my thoughts and feelings. Have I really been seeking great things for myself? It's true. Jehovah's always right. End quote for a moment. Side point, when I listen to this, Jehovah's always right, except for those times when he was talking about the last days and generations that wouldn't end, and the dates he gave when the end was coming in 1975, and you know, blood fractions and stuff. But he's right except for a few of those things. But I digress. Back to what he says, quote, be realistic. Everything that seems stable will be uprooted. Material things, property, money, or a career, not mentioned in those verses or to Baruch, it's all temporary. Seeking those things is dangerous. I need to get back to seeking great things for Jehovah. End quote. I want to remind you that he starts those sentences by saying, I imagine him reasoning something like this. So in other words, Brother Dillinger's on camera making up something that applies to the message they want to get across. And he's attributing it to a guy that lived in 625 BCE, that he's never met, has been dead for centuries, but somehow he imagines it's all about Baruch wanting a career and not wanting to work for God's prophet. I wonder how he's going to apply this. If you're keeping track at home, Jehovah said, keep serving me, or I'll kill you. That's what he said in Jeremiah 45. It's right there. You can read it with your own eyes. I'll give you your life. That's the most you can hope for. Despite sharing his skills, and as they say, his professional contacts, Baruch was still getting side-eye from Jehovah for wanting a better life. And if he even thought of doing something for himself, well, Jehovah said, I'm going to have to kill you. That was it. That was it. Read it for yourself from this Holy Scriptures, Jeremiah 45. I wanted to read that, by the way, in the Francis voice from Stripes. Any old-timers that saw the movie knows that. I'm going to kill you. Needless to say, Baruch kept recording whatever Jeremiah said and shooting off emails to his contacts, and he continued living. It's a neat story and a neat look at the Canaanite storm god known as Yahweh, scratch that, Jehovah. With that out of the way, you undoubtedly know at this point how this is all going to be applied to a Jehovah's Witness in 2025. At roughly the 11-minute mark of the broadcast, if you want to skip Brother Dillinger trying to breathe life into this story with strange voice inflections, you can skip to the governing body's message, which is this: being balanced while providing materially for us and our family, according to Brother Dillinger. I'll spare you the next minute or so with the canned warnings about wanting better things for yourself, for your family, or having a few bucks in the bank. It's all bad, and you are selfish if you're thinking this way. And it is also, by the way, nothing new from the governing body of this organization. Wanting some security, a retirement fund, a fulfilling career that you enjoy going to, or to give your family a little better life, a nice life. Well, I'm going to point you back to Baruch, or the opening teaser of this video of people vacuuming stairs and window washing. But what he does next is a tried and true formula of the governing body. They've been using this formula since I was a kid. And I'll say right now, I'm sorry, folks, being blunt, this is disgusting. It is so repulsive. You see, when you want to tell Jehovah's Witnesses to quit their bitching and to be content with next to nothing in life, they go to the one place they always go to push their agenda. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? It's on the video. They go to Africa. The governing body has consistently, over decades, they did this so much when I was a kid, pointed to Africa when wanting to emphasize how Jehovah's Witnesses should be happy with less. They should be happy living in poverty. They should be happy with financial problems. They should be happy they're experiencing persecution. The Watchtower Library is filled with experiences from African countries of people living with nothing in service to Jehovah. Just a few months ago, they returned to Africa, you might remember this, to show us a sister in her 80s rotting in a prison. They smiled as they told her experience on JW broadcast, and she's still there. They followed that up with showing us teenagers also joining her in prison for, of course, sharing their literature. And here they are again in the March 2025 broadcast. They're once again taking us to Africa. You see, Africa for the governing body is always handy when you need a tragic story. Africa as a continent gets mostly ignored until they need a dramatic example of those in the Western world who just bought their first house and their second car. Suddenly, the very wonderful people of Africa, and they are truly wonderful. I work in the coffee industry, incredible culture and people. I can't even tell you how much I enjoy it. But those people in Africa are called on to show us what it means to live with nothing and be happy serving the Watchtower Society. And I'm going to be really blunt. Again, I mentioned I know a lot of people in Africa. I'll be seeing them again in April. Full transparency, it makes me sick. Get people out of prison? No. Send monthly food rations in developing countries? Nope. Inoculating their children from disease? Nope. And if you're wondering if they have already forgotten about Baruch and how he used his, quote, professional skills and contacts to help others, well, yes, they have. They've already forgotten. Just seconds after telling us the story. Because the governing body and this organization never use their professional skills and contacts to, in a practical way, help people in places like Africa. In a disturbing spin of irony and once again lacking any shred of self-awareness, there are 54 countries in Africa. But Brother Dillinger, takes to the one most Jehovah's Witnesses will recognize. He takes us and shows us a family from the country of Malawi. Now, I'm not going to spend time on the history of Jehovah's Witnesses in Malawi. It runs deep. And I was a kid who lived it when we were writing letters because the society, the Watchtower Society, told us to the government of Malawi. You see, like Baruch, we used our professional skills and contacts to help brothers by writing letters. Like what? Writing letters. I'm sure the leaders in Malawi during the 70s couldn't wait to bust open a letter from a 10-year-old. A vicious African leader, I might add. What was the governing body doing with their professional skills and contacts in helping Malawi? Well, it's a good thing you asked, because history will show that they were printing books and magazines. Those were a big help to those in Malawi. Huge help. Books that ironically didn't help or protect anyone undergoing vicious persecution, but were also telling Jehovah's Witnesses in the world, the Western world, I should say, things like this. And I'm going to here issue a trigger warning. I'm going to say this is so hard to read, and I apologize in advance, but I read it to show you some of the stuff the governing body claims is helping the brothers in Malawi and what they were undergoing. All of this leading up to Brother Dillinger telling us about a family in Malawi. Here it is. I'm very sorry. From the yearbook of 1999, pages 182 as well as 189, and I can't imagine why they mothballed the yearbooks after reading this. Jehovah's Witnesses were told this about Malawi. Quote, "For some of our dear sisters, the persecution was especially harrowing. Many were the reports of rape, mutilation, and beating of Christian women. The sadistic attackers spared nobody. The elderly, the young, and even some pregnant sisters were put through such cruel ordeals. Some suffered miscarriages as a result. Once again, thousands were forced to flee their villages. Many found refuge in the bush. Others went into temporary exile in neighboring Mozambique. By the end of November 1967, the brutal wave of attacks on Jehovah's Witnesses had claimed at least 5 more lives. The vicious attacks claimed many lives. In Cape Maclear, at the southern end of Lake Malawi, bundles of grass were tied around Zelfat Magbaiko. Petrol was poured on the grass and set alight. He was literally burned to death. Sisters also suffered terribly. Following their refusal to buy party cards, many were repeatedly, I'll say assaulted, you know the word, by party officials. Our sisters were used by. In Longway, Sister Magala, along with many others, tried to flee the trouble. However, she was pregnant and could not run very fast. A mob, acting like a pack of wild dogs, caught up with her and beat her to death. At the campus of Bunda College of Agriculture, just outside of Lilongwe, 6 brothers and 1 sister were murdered, and their bodies were horribly mutilated. End quote. That's it, folks. The yearbook of 1999, page 182, 189, food at the proper time. I'm sorry. Really. Sorry. Jesus is surely very proud of this, right? And what the brothers did in Malawi, using their professional skills and contacts. But here we are in the March of 2025 JW broadcast, and the governing body and Brother Dillinger want to take us back to Malawi. Why, you ask? because they want Jehovah's Witnesses to meet a man named Shabiza, a father of 7 children in Malawi. They're doing well spiritually, but they can't buy food. They're starving. And he says, quote, "How stressful," end quote. Go look at it. In desperation, Shabiza goes to South Africa to find work. And Brother Dillinger he asks, quote, "Was that wise?" End quote. And in this moment, I'm watching Brother Dillinger with his new suit and his jewelry, living for free on a resort compound in upstate New York, inside a state-of-the-art studio, and I desperately want to punch him. That's just the truth. Because I know where he's taking us. I know what's coming. He reads a statement from Shabiza about living far away. He says he didn't know the language. He couldn't preach. Not kidding. That's what he says. And he couldn't benefit from the meetings. Direct quote. His family suffered without him, and they too grew weak spiritually. And his conscience started to bother him while away. Not kidding. He was just trying to feed his wife, and did I mention the 7 kids? But he felt guilty for not being back in Malawi manning a book cart. And with this, I will just say, these guys are truly sick. They have no clue the pain a father feels when he can't provide for his family. Sick. I continue to say there isn't one guy in that room in New York looking around and saying, "I don't know, guys, I don't think we should tell Shabiza's story. This is a bad idea. He's desperate. His kids are starving. Let's lean into how guilty he felt about having to go find work." I'll say it here just bluntly. I truly don't have anything left to say to a Jehovah's Witness that might be bravely listening. Thank you for being here. I'll say that. Most Jehovah's Witnesses are kind, loving people. They really are. When you look at this stuff, how do you stomach this? I sat there wondering why the governing body didn't send Shabiza a few dollars and some food for his 7 kids. I sat there wondering where the local body of elders in the congregation were. I sat here thinking, but you 11 men went to bed last night after checking your stocks at your desk in your upscale rooms, your investment companies in Ireland, with a view of the lake, a full stomach, and income flowing in as you slept, knowing that this man, this brother of yours, Shabiza, was going through a living hell in that country you're familiar with, Malawi? You slept good. And you want to point to him as someone failing his family for trying to feed them. And the answer, folks, is yes. Yes. That is exactly what Brother Dillinger and the governing body are doing in the March 2025 JW broadcast. I'm sure on learning on what Shabiza and his family were going through, they immediately sent relief, right? They used their professional skills and contacts like Baruch did to help Shabiza, right? And with that, I'll just say it again. These guys are really sick. And there's no way to deny it. But in a segue, I had to rewind multiple times because I thought I may have missed something. Brother Dillinger then says, quote, "You parents must also make decisions about secular education for your children," end quote. Wait, what? Wait a minute, what? Like I said, I had to rewind this. What happened to Shabiza and his family? Can we get a summary? It doesn't matter. He doesn't tell us what happened. You see, Shabiza's painful situation only serves as some sort of an example as to what Jehovah's Witnesses in the developed countries, those with actual money and they're feeding their kids, are supposed to do with their professional skills and contacts. Like Baruch, you remember. And somehow, Shabiza's story about trying to feed his family and having to go out of the country to find work is somehow suddenly, without any segue, as I mentioned, it's suddenly about higher education. Did I miss the correlation? Go watch for yourself. But I'm going to spare you the obvious. Sending your kids to school is very dangerous, says Brother Dillinger. For those that try to say that Jehovah's Witnesses don't discourage higher education or any education, here they are again on video discouraging education, as they have been thousands of times over the years, bashing any semblance of higher education. And it doesn't even fit the story of Shabiza. Somehow, Baruch and Shabiza's story all have to do with parents sending their kids to school. I still can't wrap my head around it. Don't try, it's not there. He ties it at that point in the video into the March 15th, 1997 Watchtower that featured harrowing experiences of Jehovah's Witnesses going to school instead of sharing their, quote, professional skills and contacts with the organization. I'm sorry, I meant Jehovah. I went and found the article he refers to. It's titled, "Should Your Child Go to a Boarding School?" Wait, what? Boarding school? What? And it's nothing new here. Why they picked this one, I have no idea. The message is always the same. Higher education is dangerous. School in general is dangerous. Other students are worldly. Oh, and even the teachers are dangerous. Being away from your local congregation is dangerous. Learning, by the way, is bad. It makes you look at things critically. It's all summed up in this article from 97 he's referring to. But a couple of things on this subject, just quickly. This podcast host is living proof of somebody that obeyed those guys. I've said it before, I gave up on any thoughts of college or additional education in the 80s because they told me it was a lot like something Satan would do. And I was seeking great things for myself like Baruch was. If you're a young Jehovah's Witness, do not listen to them. I could go on for an hour just screaming into the void. Don't listen. But my second thought here is this. Damn, are these guys losing their grip on people? They really are. I went back to the book of Jeremiah to see what college Baruch went to. I re-listened to Shabiza's story about needing to feed his kids to see if I missed when he passed up on a scholarship so he could get a career that fed his 7 kids. What did I miss? Neither guy had any relation to education or higher education in his story. What the hell is Brother Dillinger talking about? How does all of this work in their brains, after all? Can someone explain it? I think we know the answer. And I think it's important to remind anyone who listens that these men are the greatest teachers in the universe. Allegedly. The Watchtower of 1987, March 1st, page 15 says, quote, "Each article in both the Watchtower and Awake and every page, including the artwork, is scrutinized by selected members of the governing body before it is printed. Therefore, you can read the Watchtower and Awake with confidence." End quote. I see. The Watchtower of 1983, January 15th, page 22, quote, "Avoid questioning the counsel that is provided by God's visible organization." End quote. Don't ask questions. The Watchtower of 1981, December 1st, page 27, quote, "But Jehovah God has also provided his visible organization, his faithful and discreet slave, made up of spirit-anointed ones, to help Christians in all nations to understand and apply properly the Bible in their lives." Unless we are in touch with this channel of communication that God is using, we will not progress along the road to life, no matter how much Bible reading we do. End quote. Sounds like we need these guys, according to them. And my question is, Jesus, are you sure about this? Did you by chance miss anyone else when picking the faithful slave that, back in 1919? You did forget it was only the governing body that was the faithful slave. You forgot that it was only them until the 2012 annual meeting. So, sometimes you miss things. These are the best teachers on earth, what we're watching in this broadcast. Because I'm having trouble connecting Baruch and Shabitsa of Malawi to a full ride scholarship at Stanford. But that doesn't stop Brother Dillinger from sharing experiences from the 1997 Watchtower, where everyone goes off the rails if they get an education. He even shares an experience where a young woman says, quote, "I'm not kidding, quote, I stopped lingering in prayer to Jehovah," end quote, because all college kids and 19-year-old girls love the word lingering. Quote, "Happily, through the Bible and special instruction from the faithful slave, Jehovah helps us make better decisions in personal areas of life, such as those involving secular education and secular work," end quote. So says Brother Dillinger right after that. You see, he just doesn't help Shabiza feed his 7 kids. Oh, and by extension, neither does the governing body and faithful slave. But he goes on to say in the video, we're wise to do research on education and to speak to mature Christians. And with that, I say that is very wise. Here is my gift to a young Jehovah's Witness listening. Are you ready? Please go to school if you want to. Please get a career where you can feed yourself. Please do that. He suggested you talk to us older people. I'm relaying the message. And why do I say this? I hope you're sitting down. There are entire generations of Jehovah's Witnesses that obeyed these guys. I'm one of them. They didn't go to school or pursue a career or something that was more stable. Why, you ask? Because they've been saying the same crap you're watching on the March 2025 broadcast for decades. First, how about my generation as an example? It never gets old rolling this one out. Quote, "If you are a young person, you also need to face the fact that you will never grow old in this present system of things. Why not? Because all the evidence, we've heard fact, we've heard evidence so far, back to the quote, in fulfillment of Bible prophecy indicates that this corrupt system is due to end in a few years. Of the generation that observed the beginning of the last days in 1914, Jesus foretold, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things occur, from Matthew 24:34. Therefore, as a young person, you will never fulfill any career this system offers. If you are in high school and thinking about a college education, it means at least 4, perhaps even 6 or 8 more years to graduate into a specialized career. But where will this system of things be by that time? It will be well on the way towards its finish if not actually gone. End quote. That was the message to my generation. Did I mention it's from the May 22nd Awake, page 15 of 1969. I was 2. I'm now 57. But this was a fact. There was evidence, and I would never fulfill anything I wanted to do. I listened, and until I left the organization, I saw no need to plan for retirement or to get a better paying job. I know it will never happen, but someone should do a study on my generation and the horrific impact this council has had on our lives. I truly believe my generation is among the last Jehovah's Witnesses to listen to this shit, and I really hope I'm right. Sorry for all the cussing in this episode, by the way, but it is truly evil shit. How about another? Quote, a university degree may or may not improve your employment prospects, but one fact is indisputable. The time left is reduced. For all its presumed benefits, would 4 years or more in a university be the best use of that remaining time? That, end quote, that comes to us from the Awake of May 8th, page 13 of 1989. And I'm here to tell you, if you're watching this March 2025 broadcast, this message has never changed. How about another? Quote, do you not agree that to continue to enjoy divine blessings, of course, end quote, insinuating you won't have divine blessings if you don't do what we say, back to the quote, we must resist seeking things for ourselves at the expense of Jehovah's worship. That is so whether the activity or interest diverting our attention is the pursuit of wealth, get-rich-quick schemes, ambitious plans for advanced education, to have a desirable career in this system, or programs of personal fulfillment. End quote. That one comes from the Watchtower of April 15th, page 27 of 2006. So bad is higher education that in 2008, the governing body started threatening servants who had kids going to school with deletion if they were elders or ministerial servants. From the outline for meetings of circuit overseers with elders and MSs for the period of March through August 2008, direct quote, when an appointed servant promotes higher education for the purpose of economic gain or prestige, this places in doubt his qualifications to serve in the congregation and may affect his freeness of expression and that of his fellow elders. End quote. Same message. But back to our guy, Jabiza. I was having trouble as I watched the video figuring out how a father trying to feed his family and a biblical scribe named Baruch had a damn thing to do with a Jehovah's Witness wanting to better themselves in 2025. Well, wait no longer. Because in the broadcast, Brother Dillinger then says, quote, after moving to South Africa, his conscience started bothering him, and he remembered the example of Baruch, end quote. I'm sorry. No, he did not. Jabizo did not remember Baruch. If there was ever proof of how they fabricate these experiences, this is my new favorite example. Some guy named Jabiza can't feed the 8 people in his family. He is desperate, so he takes a job in South Africa, but begins to feel really bad about it, and boom, he's there on the job site, and he begins thinking about Baruch, Jeremiah's scribe. Remember him? Apologies in advance, but here it is. I'm calling bullshit. If you'd like to argue with me, I'd invite you right now, today, to approach a Jehovah's Witness facing no pressure for finance or food or anything else in the Western worlds, who has a Starbucks in one hand and their iPhone in the other, standing out front of a book cart at your local park, and asks them, quote, "Hey, Jehovah's Witness guy or gal, what can you tell me about Baruch? What does Baruch mean to you?" When they look at you like, "What? Do you mean Derek?" You will know that I'm right. But with his family starving, Shabiza suddenly remembered Baruch. If you're desperately out and trying to heal, I invite you to watch March 2025 JW broadcast and laugh. Laugh at the fact that we used to listen to these men. We used to obey them. We used to go to their meetings 3 times a week or more. We used to give them our money. We used to pay to go to their conventions out of town. We used to believe this stuff. Laughter is helpful, I promise. Baruch. Shabiza. Oh man, remember Baruch? It's just unbelievable. Brother Dillinger says that when a Jehovah's Witness might be starving, out of money, or just want to get an education so he can feed his family, he should remember this guy Baruch. I never saw Baruch coming, but Shabiza and Malawi did. And look, I felt a sense of relief. If I had known what the March 2025 JW broadcast was going to be about, I would have thought for sure that Brother Dillinger and his 11 bosses would find a way to poop on higher education a completely different way with a completely different person. I was positive. So I got to tell you, me personally, I was relieved that he didn't go on a 10-minute rant about a guy named, here he is, Noah, who was able to build a boat and find each species of animal on the entire planet Earth without an education or even the common screwdriver. And wow, did Brother Dillinger blow it. Most Jehovah's Witnesses would know my guy Noah because they tie him to everything in the organization. But Baruch? Well, give it a try. Go ahead. Ask a Jehovah's Witness. But you can't ask Shabiza, apparently, in Malawi. That's not fair. And let's be honest, come on now. Shabiza probably doesn't even exist. Make it a game. But we get the harebrained comments you've heard from every imaginary J-Dub experience from Shabiza about how happy he is to be uneducated and still dirt poor. In fact, he even mentions he's still having financial problems. But at least he's a lot more like Baruch now. Brother Dillinger wraps this all up by calling us, the viewer, just as courageous as Shabiza and Baruch, and reminds us to keep doing what Jehovah's Witnesses have always done. Forget about yourself. Forget about your loved ones. Forget about your dreams and serve Jehovah. And you do that by serving the organization. And if you want to see this application all the way through, if you do this, serve Jehovah and his organization just like Baruch. Jehovah won't kill you. So that's good news, right? He won't kill you. So maybe if you could use your professional contacts and skills for Jehovah's organization, the good news is he might not kill you. Whichever Jehovah's Witness inspired this reminder, this entire talk, this entire 2025 March broadcast, also a secondary message: quit your bitching. Just quit. But the March 2025 J-Dub broadcast isn't over, and neither is the message. At around the 18-minute mark, Brother Dillinger reminds us we should only seek recognition from Jehovah and not from anyone else. We're introduced to an interview with Bethelite Avinash Pillai. Hope I'm saying his name right. Nice looking young man who tells us he came from an up and coming career in the financial district, but while pioneering at the same time, he decided to apply for Bethel, and he gave up his career in finance. He goes to Bethel, where he's assigned to cleaning Kingdom Halls, cleaning Bethel properties. And here we go, folks. He says, quote, "And from my background, that kind of work is something that was looked down on," end quote. He starts out in the financial field, dealing with, we have to imagine, at least thousands of dollars, only to choose to be a janitor for the governing body instead. You simply can't make this stuff up. And again, for all their internet spies, have they not seen the memes and stereotypes about their organization and what they do to young people? He goes on to relate that he was used to being in a merit-based career where you were recognized for your talent and hard work, but not at Bethel. Our brothers, or I should say other brothers, were passing him up for what he calls privileges. I'm going to save you the blow-by-blow on his experience, but he admits that he actually enjoyed being recognized by others for his talents. And well, Bethel is beating that right out of him. He very ironically says that he, quote, found himself chasing the next compliment. He was chasing happiness, end quote. I just cannot believe what these men do to people. This young guy, nice looking guy, obviously very smart. They turned him into a janitor, all while he praises them for making him do it. He says he only looks for Jehovah's recognition now, but he leaves out that this recognition he speaks of comes from, well, it comes from other men, just like it did when he had a career. It comes from guys at Bethel, the men of his organization. Jehovah doesn't show up and give him a hug, folks. The video swells with music, and we see him looking up at a beautiful sky, and he tells us that the organization has been molding him. That's a quote. I'm serious. And all I could hear was the band Queen in the background singing "Another One Bites the Dust." You're welcome. It's in your head for the day. Another one bites the dust. The sick things this organization does to young people is something to behold. By the time anyone may realize it, you're 45. That's what happened to me. I truly beseech any young Jehovah's Witness to never let this happen to you. Even if it's all true and you make it into a paradise earth, you might be stuck being the person that tells the resurrected Baruch that he can't be with a woman or ever get married in paradise. He's resurrected after all. Sound like a fun job, huh? At least Jehovah didn't kill him, right? Come on. I'll give you yourself the spoil. You'll be in paradise. Plant-based diet alone. All those skills and professional contacts to live in a paradise, eating asparagus, alone in his mansion, petting his kangaroos. But at least he didn't seek great things for himself, right? That is literally as good as it will get for Baruch. And for any Jehovah's Witness young person today, if you bypass today for their version of tomorrow. And candidly, see past episodes about their tomorrow. If all of this doesn't bum you out enough watching the video, never put it past the governing body to shamelessly leverage someone else's pain to get their message across. We then in the video meet a married couple who have a child, but painfully the child had severe brain damage. And look, folks, this stuff works. I immediately turned into an emotional mess watching this family. Hurts. Beautiful looking little guy. The challenges are real. But the father goes on to say, quote, I used to feel like, why was our path to get to the new world harder than our brothers and sisters? End quote. The mother and sister goes on to briefly relate that she felt isolated and lonely due to their unique situation, and then immediately says that they used to live for the conventions and assemblies because they loved to sit in the front row so they could hear the speaker and concentrate. But good grief, now, due to their son's special needs, they have to sit in the back of the assembly hall. What? I'm not kidding. These people seem so kind and genuine. They're clearly great parents. They're real-life heroes, in my opinion, raising a child with brain damage. But instead of featuring all the challenges and the heroic effort they put out for their son hour by hour every day of their life, the faithful and discreet slave decides to roll them out and feature how it put a cramp in their style at the assembly hall. They go on to have a baby girl. As time goes by, time races by, the kids are growing up. The father goes on to explain the enormous preparation it takes for them to get out in the ministry just once a month for Jehovah's organization. We're treated to shots of them pushing this young man in a wheelchair as they knock on doors in the ministry. They explain that the congregation doesn't know the half of what they go through. But here's the message: Jehovah does, even if others don't. Direct quote from the video. Really upsetting. You get the real me on this show, and frankly, these guys make me sick. I try to laugh, but it's just sick. These incredible people and parents, from Shabiza to this family with the kid with challenges, their incredible son and what he goes through every day, they aren't highlighted for the depth of their love or their heroic efforts to care for him. That's barely touched upon. I'd love to know what they go through. I'd love to understand how they make it, how they lean on each other. I'd love to know how it's impacted his little sister, who's entirely healthy. We see her in the video. I'd love to celebrate what their character does for me as I watch this. But we get none of it in the March 2025 broadcast. We're steered back to the organization with snippets on how hard it is for this family to go out in field service. Why are they going out at all? And how they can no longer sit in the front row at the assembly hall. Go watch it. Seeing is believing. But what incredible people. I could give Sorry, I'll stop guessing. I don't care how their lives impact a multi-billion-dollar organization. Hopefully we care about them. And with that, I'll tell you I'm not even halfway through the March 2025 JW broadcast at this point, but I'm choosing to stop it here. I'm possibly going to create a part 2 next week because I must tell you, wow, there is a lot more fun to be had with this doozy, including watching governing body member David Splain lose his marbles and go off on camera. Stay tuned, probably next week. But please, take it from a kid that hung on their every word in the 70s and 80s. I didn't follow my dreams as a younger man. I left the organization in my mid-40s. I've paid a price for my obedience to them. It is very important to live in the present, in today. The governing body has a 100% failure rate on everything they have ever predicted would happen in the future. 100% failure. But if you're a Jehovah's Witness who watched the March 2025 JW broadcast and think they may be onto something, I want to present to you the very definition of who these men are and their repugnant hypocrisy. From the announcement of October 17th, 2023, in Britain, addressed to the congregation service committees, they wrote, quote, spiritually qualified, licensed lawyers and paralegals are needed to assist with the work at Bethel. There is a particular need for those who have experience in litigation, corporate matters, or real estate transactions. We are hoping to locate several experienced lawyers and paralegals who have exceptional analytical, research, and writing abilities. End quote. In 2025, the most important 11 men on earth are ironically asking the very Jehovah's Witnesses who disobeyed them by getting a college education to now donate their skills, talents, and contacts to the organization. Is this the point of the Baruch example? Did I miss it? One thing is for sure. Jehovah said he wouldn't kill Baruch if he kept giving him his skills. And the application is clear. Despite disobeying them, if you give the governing body your skills and contacts now, those same 11 guys might just spare your life in their Armageddon. I want to thank you for joining me this week. Wherever you may be well.